It's about time you had a masterclass on Elementor's version 4 class system. Now, I'm not just going to go over the colors and the fonts and the variables, but I'm going to show you how you can apply custom CSS because that feature is currently missing with the version 4 system. So please make sure you stick around or go and check the timestamp if you want to jump to that part. And we are also going to have a look at version 3 just to remind you, how could you use custom CSS to get more out of your designs and Elementor? And if at any point you like what you're seeing, hit the like button, subscribe, share, and follow. I'm Imran from Web Squadron. Go and check out our courses and guides, and don't forget to sign up to join our channel. I've got a fresh WordPress installation here. I've got the Hello theme installed, and I'm using Elementor and Elementor Pro. Now, you will notice I have the beta version because I want to show off a new feature that came out very recently at the time of recording where we could add in variables for fonts. But like I said, keep watching because I'm going to show you how to apply custom CSS that will work whether you have a version 3 or a version 4 element. And as a reminder, you do have to enable version 4 within your Elementor settings if you want to use it. Now, as a word of warning, don't use version 4 widgets on a live production website. It is still in alpha testing mode. It's not the final beta. It's not the final. If you want to go and do that, you can. Technically it works pretty fine. But I always recommend test out and play with it and get used to the class system on a test or a dummy staging website. And the final thing I want to mention before we jump into a page is that I have custom loaded the Poppins font because I'm also going to show you how you can use custom CSS, whether it's version 3 or version 4 or even combined, to control the font family. Here's my example page, and I've already loaded onto here 3 version 3 elements and 3 elements from version 4. We have the heading, this is the version 3 heading, we have the text editor from version 3, and we have a standard button, again from version 3. We have a version 4 heading, a version 4 paragraph widget, which you could use for text. It's not as expansive as your normal text editor, but I'm just showing you the paragraph widget. And then we have the version 4 button. Now, the standard colors you're going to get look like this. It is seriously ugly, but that is a version 4 button. And for anyone that's not familiar with version 4 widgets, when you go over to look at your widget list, you will see your atomic elements. So I've used the heading, I've used the paragraph, and I've used the button. Let's start off with a quick reminder of the version 3 elements and when you would use custom CSS and where you would do it. And it really helps if you've got Elementor Pro. We've got our version 3 heading, and what I'm going to show you can apply to any of the version 3 elements. You can go and do your styling, or you may want to do something very particular, or you may want to add in like a class whereby you may say for every heading that has this class name, I want to apply this particular style. So if I go to my advanced tab and I go down to where we have classes, I may give it a class name called heading style, which is not very imaginative, but let's just go with it. And then scroll down to custom CSS, and this is where we can add it if you've got Elementor Pro. I'll add in a full stop, heading style, curly bracket, add in a hex color, and then I'll just close off the bracket. Now, because I went and gave it a heading style class name for the heading, I could then go to this text editor, go to the advanced tab, go to where we have classes, and I could just add in heading style. And it's going to pick up that custom CSS. And that is why sometimes applying class names and some particular styling works really, really well. However, it always felt a little bit long-winded sometimes when you were trying to do classes for lots of widgets across the website. Now, this particular CSS, I could have stuck into here, the advanced tab, like I've shown you, or I could have gone to the site settings, scroll down to custom CSS, and I could have dropped it in there as well. And anytime I go and add that class, heading style, and it could be to many widgets where it's going to work. I mean, sometimes you do have to expand on it to let it know that it's a link or it's a H2 or a paragraph, or maybe you're applying a color to an image like a container background. But for a very basic rule, you could do that as well. Or you could go to your actual theme. So you could go to Appearance, go to Customize. You'll see an additional CSS tab, and I could add the code in there as well. Now, there are other plugins and widgets, Site Origin CSS, and lots of other ways that you could apply CSS. You could even do it with code snippets. For those of you that have followed my tutorials or you've joined the CSS course from our website, you'll be familiar with how much I like fluid typography. So it doesn't matter if your website is a super big desktop, going down to a mobile, your font will grow and shrink as you increase the size of your screen or when you switch to a device. And it makes it really quick and easy for you to build websites without having to second guess what is the best font I need to use for this big screen or that small screen. And I always like to do that with some custom CSS, and I normally drop it into the site settings. So here's an example of what I would pop in, and I know it looks pretty scary, but you can go and use the font clamp calculator. I'll pop a link for that in the video description. Add it as a code snippet to your website. You go and tell it your smallest size and your maximum size, and it will work everything out for you. It's super easy to use, but I've gone and created one for extra large. And what it will do is it will go from 4 REM down to 3 REM when you get to the mobile. And I can now pick up this class name, go to this V3 heading, go to my advanced tab, and I'm going to paste it in. And that is now using 4 REM. And if I now go over to the mobile, that will have gone down to 3 REM. And when you go to the tablet, it's probably going to be somewhere in between 4 and 3 REM. So you can go from really big to really small. And when it comes to custom CSS, you can really expand on this. You could probably have a class name where you've got your font weight built into there, your font clamp. You could even do one for buttons in terms of border radius. So every time you drop a button in, you just give it a particular class name. It could be background colors. You could even do font clamp for your margins and your paddings, your spacing. You are not limited to just using it for font size. But when it comes to using classes for version 4, it is very, very different, especially if you ever want to go into using custom CSS. But like I've said many times now, there is a way to do it, and you don't need to use an extra plugin or a code snippet. It's just a bit of CSS, and it isn't that complicated at all. You are going to be surprised. Now, I didn't touch on the global fonts or the global colors for version 3. And if you had gone into site settings, you could have set your colors here. And with global fonts, you could have gone and set in your custom loaded font. Now, I custom loaded the Poppins font, but I have intentionally gone over to my global fonts and I've set everything as Times New Roman. And I've done that because I really want to force home how we can control your font families at any time with a bit of CSS. And for those of you that are very eagle-eyed, that is why my top 3 elements, which are all version 3, have adopted or inherited the Times New Roman font. Whereas my version 4 elements, they kind of haven't inherited anything. That's okay. Let's jump into the version 4 class system and give you a quick reminder of how you would manage your colors and your font sizes and things like that using the new class system, and how we can take it further with variables. And don't forget, we are going to make it even better by controlling it with custom CSS. And the reason why I keep mentioning the CSS part is because you could create lots of individual classes, but then that could take quite a bit of time. And if you've already built out a framework, maybe alongside your client or somewhere else, you can drop in all of your CSS in one go, and it will feed through to your version 3 and your version 4 class system. And that's why I feel like when it comes to scaling and being more efficient, this is the best way to go. Right, your version 4 heading, slightly different layout to version 3, obviously, atomic components. You go to the style tab, you go to layout, you can't add in a class name here. What you would do is you would go and create a class name. So as an example, we're going to do one using the font size. So let's go for extra large. I'm going to give this the name, and then I'm going to hit return. And you will have noticed that the version 4 heading has not changed in size. Now, as a reminder, in case anyone has skipped anything, if we go to my version 3 heading, and this is version 3 of Elementor in terms of the widget, we have the same class name there, XXX large. And if we go over to the site settings, again, apologies if you know all this already, but we already have some rules or a formula for XXX large. So for version 3, that particular rule works. It will not work for your version 4 headings, because what you have to do is actually go and build out your class. Now, I'm going to show you the way you can do it, and then later on, I'm going to show you how to do a custom CSS, so you don't have to manually pick everything up one bit at a time. So if I've now ensured my class is a green color, I'm then going to go down to typography. I'm going to go to font size, and rather than adding in a percentage or a pixel or an REM value, I'm going to pick the formula icon. And then I'm going to paste in the code. This doesn't need to have the word font size at the start. You just go from clamp all the way to the semicolon at the end. And you can instantly see it has now gone and applied the same size as what we had above. Now, it is going to look a little bit different because this is defaulting at the minute or inheriting the Times New Roman font, whereas my version 4 heading, it's not kind of defaulting to anything. So please excuse the differences in the weight. But when I go over to mobile, you can now see the size has shrunk in kind of accordance with what we have above. So really easily, I have now added a rule for that particular class. Now, if I go over to my paragraph, which is kind of where you would pop your text in for your version 4, and I go to my style and I click here, it's going to tell me there is a class within my library called XXX large. I now pick it. It will instantly adopt that formula. So it's quick and easy, whereas before you'd have to go and manually type it in. So if we go to this version 3 editor or text editor, you would go and type in XXX large. Now, it wasn't a showstopper to do that, and it didn't take up a lot of time. But if you really want to be more slick and efficient and quicker with building, the version 4 class system is massively going to help you out, but there are limitations to it, and we're going to handle that later on. And if I click on this button and I go to the style tab and I again pick XXX large, it's now applied it to the version 4 button as well. Now, I've only applied the font size for the XXX large, but I could have applied the font family, I could have done the weight, I could have done a background color, the text color, lots and lots of different things. But there is a chance that you might apply lots of different styling, and then you come back to your page and you go into your heading and you can see it's got XXX large, but you kind of go, but what styling did I pick? Because that sometimes became quite problematic if you were using a version 3 heading, whereas now in version 4 elements, I can see I've got a green dot. So that is telling me that for this particular class, something has been set here. And if I go and expand on typography, I can see the green dot. Now I'm going to mix and match an extra class. We're going to call this one Poppins, and I'm going to go and click create. Now, as soon as I create it, that one has gone green, because what I do now will be applicable to the Poppins. If I click extra large, and I was to go in font family here now, and if I click it, if I scroll down, you're going to see my custom font. If I go and select Poppins here, it's applicable to my size class, and I don't want to do that. I want it to be applicable to the Poppins class. So I'm going to go in and I'm going to scroll and pick Poppins. And you will now see the Poppins font family has been applied. But did you notice anything else when I was jumping or changing my classes? When we're in Poppins, which is green, the font family is green, but the font size has gone gray because something has been applied, but it's not part of that font family or that class name, sorry. If I click XXX large, the font family's gone gray because that's applicable or controlled or inherited via a different class name. And my font size here is now applicable to the XXX large. So just get used to the gray and the teal, turquoisey, aqua green color. If that made sense, make sure you put hell yes, that made sense in the comments. So at any time, I can now go over to any of my version 4 elements, like the paragraph. I can click here and I can go and select Poppins and it will automatically apply it. I can at any time get rid of anything I've got as well by just deleting it, or I could click the 3 dots and I could rename it, or I could even say that I have a font family for normal, and when I hover, I actually want a different font family. So if I go and click hover now, and I was to go over to my typography, and I was to change this to be Times New Roman, and I now hover over my heading or my text, can you see the font family is changing? And this is for the hover style, and if I go and pop this back to be normal, you don't have to create one class for normal and one class for hover. This knows when I go to Poppins, it is Poppins. If I go and click hover, it's Times New Roman. It's all within the same class. So if you want to have particular styling for when you focus, so for instance, I might say for focus, I want to have a border go around it. You go and click focus, go over to border, go and add in your border. And then when you hover over it or tab to it, sorry, it's same kind of thing. You're going to get a border appear. That's a lot of control you're now getting without having to write a lot of CSS code. Now, I very quickly want to add in another class name just so you understand hierarchy, and then we'll jump into the custom CSS bits to make your website building so much more efficient. We're going to go over, I'm just going to click on the heading for now. I'm going to call it Times New Roman. I'm going to click Create. I'm going to go down to where we have my font family, and I'm now going to pick Times New Roman. You'll now notice that I've got two font families in action or active on this particular V4 heading, Times New Roman and Poppins. But even when I make Poppins go green, the Times New Roman is still visible because of the way the hierarchy works. Now, if we go over here to where we have Class Manager, this is going to allow me now to see the different classes that we've currently created. Remember, site settings for your custom CSS, you can stuck it in your theme customizer or within your custom CSS part of the particular element or widget. For version 4, you will have a class manager. And because Times New Roman was created after Poppins, it jumps to the top of the hierarchy list. So if you go and create a size called XXX large, and then you create another one called XXX large amended, afterwards, that will take a higher priority. But if you want your order to change, you can pick up any of your elements like Poppins, and I'm going to pop it above Times New Roman. So it doesn't matter what order I created them in now, if I rearrange them here, even though Times New Roman was created after Poppins, Poppins is a higher priority in terms of what font family I want to use. If you're liking the video so far, please smash the like button and don't forget to sign up and join our channel. I now want to add in a color class, and then we're going to jump into variables for your sizing or your colors as well. And then we'll get onto the custom CSS part. So staying on the V4 heading, I'm going to click into my classes and I'm going to call it orange. Staying on the typography, I'm going to scroll down to where we have text color. We're going to go for FFA 900. And now whenever I use that class or I select it, and just to make a point, if I go over to my paragraph, we only have Poppins at the moment. I'm now going to select orange. And by the way, if you do have a lot of classes, all you have to do is start typing it and it will filter for you. The nice fancy thing about version 4 is how it allows us to use variables. So if I stay on this orange at the moment and I just scroll down, you'll notice we have a button to clear, which kind of is just clear away what you've got. But we also have these 3 circles overlapping called variables. If I click that, it's going to allow me to add a range of colors. Basically, it's like your global colors. So I could pop in a range of colors because we've got it on our version 3, but we haven't kind of used it on our version 4. And what you have to also bear in mind is if I go and click on a version 3 heading and you go to style down here, you could click this and it would show you your global colors. Well, on this version 4 heading, whether I click the colors or anywhere within here, I'm not seeing them, am I? My global colors. And even with variables, there's nothing there. But you're basically going to recreate them here. So I'm going to click create a variable. I've called it text color and I've gone and added in my color. So now that will be visible for me. If I want to overwrite that, I could click the icon over here and I can now change the color. Bear in mind though that if you do that, it is no longer using that variable color. If you want to use the variable color, click variable and it's now there for you to use. And the great thing about this is that I could go and add in as many colors as I want, like pink, red, go and hit create, and it is now there. And I can just click this and pick any one of them. So it's very similar to the global colors you would have been using. And you can create them on the fly rather than you're on your page, you got to make sure you hit publish or whatever, go to site settings, go and click global colors, then go and create your color, then jump back out again. So this does reduce, in a way, the amount of clicks you would have done. Please do bear in mind that any changes I make here were affecting the paragraph as well. And for those of you that are very eagle-eyed, you'll notice because my orange class still is green. If anything is ever green and you make changes, it will be applicable wherever you've used that class. So if you want that not to happen, go and click local to stop it. But I'm just going to go back over to my orange. I'm going to add in another class called FFA 900. Staying on the V4 heading, I'm just going to address variables that you will eventually be able to do because at the moment in the beta version, if I go to V4 heading, I could, if I want, create loads of classes like extra large, medium, small, extra, extra small. or I could go over to local. And what I'm going to show you, you could do with your class or just with the local class. I could go over to font size, click the variable, hit the plus sign, go and give it a name, say like medium, and go and pop my font size clamp inside of there. But at the moment, you don't have the option to do that. But if you were to go and set something up like, say, to REM like that, I could go to any version 4 element, like the paragraph, click on variable, and then I could go and pick medium, and that will apply to REM. So again, you can, very similar to what you would have been doing with like your typography, it's almost like you're building out your framework for you to select from. And when it comes to efficiency, when you're able to click like a button or an icon, and then you get a list of what you are going to use on your website, you know what to pick. There's no second guessing now. Now, I want to touch on how the classes you build will touch some version 3 and version 4 elements, and how some classes won't, and how we can add in a little bit of code to allow you to add in your custom CSS to make your website building so much more quicker and easier than ever before. On our version 4 heading element, we went and created the orange class, which basically used this text color. And don't forget, you could modify this if you want by picking any one of your variables. Now, if I go over to my version 3 heading and I go to my advanced tab and scroll down to where we have classes, we're already using a XXX large class, which is from my site settings. This is not using the classes that we built using version 4 class system, okay? I'm just going to show you in a moment. I'm going to go and add in orange, and you'll notice the color has changed. If I go over to my version 3 text editor and I add in orange, it will change. If I go over to my version 3 button and I drop in the orange, it does not change. So some of the colors you build in your version 4 will cross-pollinate into version 3, but not all of them. But stay with me, because I will show you how to make it applicable across version 3 and version 4. Now, going back over to my version 4 heading, I'm going to click on my extra large. I'm going to click the 3 dots and I'm going to rename it. If I go over to my button that still had the XXX large over there, that has also changed. So you make the change once and it will apply it everywhere. If I go over to my version 3 heading that we know is using the XXX large that we had in our site settings, the old way of doing your custom CSS with your font size clamp calculating formulas, and I changed this to be XXX LRG, it is not picking up the class I built in version 4. And this is because version 4 elements use a different class name for your widgets. Don't worry, I'm going to show you how to get around that. But I just want to remind you also, we had the pop-in. So this is where we went and set a font family for pop-ins, and we had Times New Roman as well. Now, by default, my version 3 fonts in the global fonts, they were already set to be Times New Roman anyway. But if I go over to where we have the classes, we know it picks up the color, but it won't do the font size. And if I type in pop-ins, it doesn't convert there either. But if we go to the text editor, we go to the advanced tab, and I go and add in pop-ins, you will have seen it change. So we know that the color that you build in version 4 will work for version 3 except the button text. We know that if you do the font family in version 4, it will work for the text editor, but it won't work for the heading. And the font family also won't work for the buttons in version 3. So you've got a bit of a mismatch in here. And how can you create a framework once, regardless of whether you're using a version 3 or a version 4 element where you can do custom CSS? Because the big thing that is glaringly obvious at the moment is that it doesn't matter where you go in terms of your version 4 tabs, you are not going to see a custom CSS area for you to add in your code. And now, the moment you've probably waited for, I'm going to show you how to write your custom CSS inside of your site settings or your theme customizer or wherever else you want to pop it, that's going to allow you to control or be able to add in classes for your version 3 elements or your version 4, and it will be able to manage your font family, your font size, your background colors. And if you use this alongside the current global colors, the global fonts, even your variables that you get with version 4, it is going to transform how you build. I've removed all of the classes from the version 3 and the version 4 elements, and I'm going to get rid of all of these by deleting them. You don't have to do that, but I just want to make a point that the CSS code I'm going to give you works. Let's now go over to our site settings and go down to custom CSS and get rid of the original code. First thing I'm going to do is add in my XXX large, and this will work for version 3 and version 4. And all you got to do is type this in and it will apply it. Even when you get to version 4 and you create your brand new class, you just type in the class name and it will feed through what we're going to pop in here. Now, I'm not going to do all of the sizings. I just want you to understand how this works. So I'm going to pop this in. Now, again, you may look at this and feel like that looks pretty complicated compared to what we had before, but it isn't. Down here, I've added in the original code I was using for version 3. So I said XXX large is, whether it's a H1, H2, H6, paragraph, whatever, this is the formula I want to apply. Font size clamp, and it goes from 3 rem on the mobile up until 4 rem on the desktop. And I would have set my maximum and minimum thresholds, and it works absolutely fine. This exact same font size code is up here, right? It's the same clamp. The difference is how we're now accommodating a little bit more, and we're ensuring it touches the version 4 elements. Rather than me writing class name is, and then I went and popped in all of my HTML tags, I've now started off with colon is, and then I've said V4 XXX large. Now, you could call it XXX large if you want, but I've just put V4 underscore XXX large just to drum home how this works absolutely fine, okay? So I've given it a class name, and then I've got my syntax over here, or my HTML tags. So this is the extra bit at the beginning, okay? Just look at the difference between this and that. And I've also gone and added in A for links, for button, and if you are using any spanning as well. You know, why duplicate effort? Make this cover off everything whenever you use this class name. And then underneath, I have done this. And this is where you now have to take a little bit of attention. This is a copy of what we got above, but the difference is where I went and specify what my class name is, I've now put it afterwards. And then I've said pick up where it's an E heading base, E paragraph base, or E button base. These are the 3 new component classy wrapper names that Elementor has added in for version 4. And they did tell us about this when they introduced it. So if you are trying to apply some custom CSS, you can do so, but you have to ensure that your code picks up the old way and the new way. And you could argue, but isn't this just duplicating? It is in a way. But trust me, if you take your code that you currently have and you now use this format and all you're changing is what's sat above the font size. And this is going to be the same for when you're picking up your font family, your background color, your border radius. This will touch it. While we're here, I'm going to go and add in a few more. I've added in a class for V4 underscore poppins. Now, you could have just popped in the word poppins as your class name, but I did it just so that you fully understand, okay, what we're doing here. So we've got V4 poppins. It's picking up all of that, button span as well. And then underneath, we've got it repeated over here, slightly different order, but E heading base, paragraph base, button base. And now we're going to set the font family to poppins. And you have to have a fallback like sans serif. You could have poppins, comma, Montserrat, comma, sans serif. You can have as many fallbacks as you want. It's always a good idea to have a fallback like a system font. And the last one I'm going to give you is V4 underscore gray underscore BG for background. So this is where I'm now setting my background color. You could do one with just color if you want, because we have seen that the color did work for your headings, and your buttons for version 4 when you created the orange color, but it didn't work when you wanted to apply that same font text color to the version 3 button. So let's add in V4 underscore orange as a class name, and it's going to touch the version 3 and the version 4, and we've now got our text color there as well. Let's go to our version 3 elements first. We're going to go over to the advanced tab, go to the classes, add in V4 underscore XXX large, and you can see it's changed. We go over to the mobile, it will apply it. So that worked absolutely fine. Add in V4 underscore orange, it's changed color. V4 Poppins, it's changed the Poppins font. And then the final one, V4 Gray BG, and it's gone and given us a gray background. Obviously, you'd want to go and change your layout, align to self, and you got to do that with the version 4 as well, in case anyone's not familiar with that. So when you're on the version 4, go to layout and make sure you've aligned it to be at the start. If you don't do that, your button goes all the way across. We've gone and added in some classes. Now you might go, but yeah, we knew that. You did it in your site settings, custom CSS. You know, you were touching these HTML tags and button and span. Of course it's going to work. Now I'm going to pick all of them up just to save time, and I'm going to go over to my text editor and I'm going to pop them all in, and you're going to see it does all of the sizing, the color, the background, the pop-ins. We go over to our button and I go and drop the class in here. Again, it's done the same. Now let's go over to the version 4. Remember, if we go to my class manager, I've got no global classes there, and everything has been done in the site settings. So I'm going to go over here and I'm going to type version 4 underscore XXX large, and I'm going to create that. Look what happened. The size went bigger. If I go and click into it, now this is the bit that a lot of people are going to say, I'm not sure I like that, Imran. If we go over to typography, nothing has been set. So if you used a traditional version 4 system, you're going to get markers, green or gray or whatever, even red in some cases, to say, look, something's been inherited or been created as part of this class or another class. You don't get that here. But depending on how you want to build. So if you want to do like a CSS framework alongside the class system, because now that I've created XXX large, if I go over here to this heading, it's there for me to pick. So I'm still using the class system. And look, I'm making a point here. It's going to pick it up. We go over to the button and I go pick it again. Everything's gone big. But you're using custom CSS, which is missing at this moment in time for your version 4 elements. Let's go and add in a few more. Let's do version 4 orange. It changes. Let's do version 4 gray BG. It changes. Now, obviously, I'm not aligned to self, but if you aligned it, it would have shrunken it down. And the final one was version 4 Poppins. We picked that. Again, it's changed to Poppins. Now, when I go over here, I can just go and pick all of my options, and you're going to see things changing as I pick them. And now when we go to the button, I can again do the same. So pop-ins, we're going to go for gray background, and we'll do the color. You could create your border radius for your button as a class rather than add it into your site settings, or you could have done it as your site settings. So I'm marrying up two really good, efficient ways of building. My framework that sits over here, and you can build it out to be as expansive as you want, and then utilizing Elementor's class system. Remember though, if I go and click on any one of these and I go down here, it's not going to say there is any color visible because I'm using this class. I'm going to stick a copy of that CSS code in the video description so that you can go and play around with it, because one of the obvious questions has been about custom CSS. We know we've got these extra wrapper names now that we could use, but if you wanted to cross-pollinate between version 3 and version 4, it seemed like a bit of a problem, or you kind of were compromising a little. But if you want to build a really efficient system with version 3 and version 4 at the same time, or eventually with version 4, because I don't know when and if and when we're going to get custom CSS with that, this could be a great way to build for you. I'm Imran from Web Squadron. I really hope you like and subscribe and share and follow. Make sure you sign up and join our YouTube channel for exclusive videos. Go and check out our guides and courses. Take care. See you soon. Bye.